childhood up, we have had to conform to a certain social game. And so we're in a constant state of competition. Good assistance, secret. You can't make a mistake.
Welcome, everyone, to Friends of Failure. I'm your host, Sam, and this is our co-host, Megan.
Heyo.
As you can tell, it's just well, I guess if you're listening, you can't tell. It's actually just me. I am mimicking Megan, and I'm doing my voice. I am showing my voice acting skills today, and I'm going to do the whole episode by myself.
Yeah, everything is pre-recorded from my end.
Oh man, that would be a funny episode though. Like, that's the premise. You just have pre-recorded answers and I have to react.
Nothing meshes together.
God. And I think it would be, if we did it right, it'd be such a train wreck that people would be like, well, I can't stop watching. So hey, so it's just you and I again. This is our third.
I mean, we've done a few, just us. A lot of them have been more funny based, and I think this one we're gonna go on the real or whatever you want to call it.
I don't know if I'm going to put people in that position. Not today. I don't feel like we need a disclaimer or anything. But hey, if you're having a good day, we're about to up that up.
There it is. There's the disclaimer.
Yeah, you're about to get sideswiped by a train. How are you doing today? Your hair's still very much pink. Still looks great.
Yeah, very pink. For anyone watching the videos and anyone not, I guess. I have transitioned to bright pink, shorter hair. Yeah.
Okay, so I do have to. I mean, I guess you need to explain this a little bit, but I do have to say that it's held for what, 2 weeks now? 1 week?
Oh, I'm maintaining it. I'm using like color conditioner and stuff. Yeah.
Secrets out. Because I was gonna say, like, I'm like, your hair is still very pink. Like, whatever they used was top notch.
Gotta keep it together at this point. Yeah, it was a very spontaneous, a hair model thing came up. I signed up for it. I got it, and they paid me to dye my hair.
Oh, you got paid to do that?
I got cash money for them to.
I start Googling, how do I start? That's cool. I'm assuming something like 10 grand, 20 grand.
Oh yeah, right? Yeah. I'm rolling in that hair model bank.
Wow, that's how it's done.
I can retire.
I've known girls that like went down that path. They didn't do it forever because at some point they go, hey, I want to just dye my hair what I want to dye it. But they would do like some crazy hairstyles, but I never even considered that they were getting paid to do it. I just assumed they were like, fuck my shit up, let's go. And I'm like, yeah. Okay, cool.
I think sometimes people just do it like they don't get paid, but they get a free hairstyle or whatever. And that's a lot of money in itself. But yeah, my husband and I joked that I was going to end up with a green mullet, which is like the opposite of my style. No offense to anyone with a green mullet out there. Because it was very much like in the contract, hey, you don't get to choose what is happening to you. You just got to go with it once you've committed. And luckily, I enjoy the results. And ironically, when my stylist was like, hey, like what colors do you not want to do? I said pink, and here we are. But I like it.
Well, it was a trap. They trapped you. But pink isn't a bad hair color. Like, it could have been like vomit brown and green, or like baby's diaper, or whatever color that would be, right?
Someone's out there offended right now because they have that exact
I just dyed my hair diarrhea brown. Oh god, nobody likes it. No, but that's cool. I mean, I didn't even consider the fact that like you're a part of the like beauty world, so of course to like maintain it and whatever. I dyed my hair one time in high school. Like, it was a disaster.
Yeah, you didn't know what you're doing. I did the same thing. I dyed my hair in high school, and I had to do it outside because my parents were like, hell no, that's not happening in our white bathroom. So it was me and a garden hose and some red dye, and it was terrible. It did not look great.
You're like, honestly, it just ended up being my face looked like I had a birthmark for 2.5 weeks because I stained my face.
I literally had like red tint all down my neck.
Oh no!
Other than pink hair, what have you done?
Well, so this weekend, I don't know, borderline failure, more of just like disappointment. Yesterday, my husband and I go out to brunch, but not like super often. So we were like, hey, we'll treat ourselves. We'll go to our favorite brunch place, get all ready, like gonna do a morning kind of date scenario. We get over there and there's like a few cop cars, but we're like, oh, they're just getting breakfast. It's totally normal. The place was packed. Nothing seemed like out of the ordinary.
Yeah, boy.
We get in there, get situated, place our orders. I get my coffee, and then the waitress comes out and she looks like a little off and she's like, hey, so we got a bomb threat.
Nice.
And you guys can definitely like hang out for another hour. They're giving us an hour. And in my head, I was like, bomb threat with an hour timeline. It was bizarre. And then very quickly, like she walked away. I was trying to like drink my coffee and like we were talking about whether we should just leave. And she comes back and she's like, you guys got to leave now, like now. And then the whole restaurant is like immediately getting up and leaving. And the kitchen staff is like freaked out and leaving. And yeah, that's what happened. And we just wanted to go get brunch. And apparently there's another brunch place in town that also got a bomb threat. So someone is out there just ready to destroy brunch.
You know, I have to like kind of laugh at it because the other part of me goes way too serious with it, of like the deconditioning that kind of happens to you whenever like it's really important that when you're in elementary school that you do fire drills, tornado drills, or at least in places where there's a lot of tornadoes, right?
Yeah.
It's gotten to the point that in all reality they need to be doing school shooter drills, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and this isn't just for kids, this is for parents as well, but you know, someone was like, oh, there's a bomb threat. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
like,
and
so are you guys doing anything about it, or like, do we need to leave? And what's so strange is that people pick up on this stuff happening and they go, oh, I could do that, and they have no intention to do a bomb. But then like our protocols that we do have, and I don't know a lot about them, this is an assumption, is very much like, okay, we got to get everyone out of the building and we have to make sure that we comb everything perfectly. We have to have this, that, and the other. And there's all these protocols. And a lot of the protocol isn't about protecting the people that could be harmed by the bomb threat. It's more about covering the ass of whoever is making sure the bomb's not there.
yeah.
The school is like, hey, they need to know how to survive a tornado because we're not paying for any dead kids. And you're like, well, shouldn't it just be that we're trying to save the children? No. You're like, all right. In terms of like an institution trying to protect itself in a world where everyone's like, wait, we can sue people, it kind of makes sense, but it's obnoxious and crazy.
It was really weird in the context of like it happening at a restaurant, because as we were leaving, as like their management was running around going like, leave now, bomb threat. So like you would think everyone's priority is just, let's go so we're safe, like you were saying. But they were also yelling, we're gonna comp all your food, don't worry about that, like blah blah blah. I was like, who's sitting here going, how do I pay for my coffee real quick before I possibly get blown up? Like they were still doing like a customer service thing. It's like, let's drop that shit, and like as people just go.
And that's the strange part too, right? Of there's a reality of keeping the calm, because if everyone's like losing their minds, then it's kind of like game over, right? Because the panic will get you killed quicker than the bomb or the fire. But
the weird thing is, like you said at the beginning, we're so desensitized to it. Nobody was panicked. No patron. I didn't see anyone like look panicked. The waitresses were the most uncomfortable, and that's because they were having to manage a bomb threat as waitresses. They are not paid enough money to risk their life like that.
Well, yeah, and even if they were, they're like, I didn't sign up for that. Like,
yeah,
I have to fix the curtain. We don't even have to edit this. Yeah, that's right, people. I'm fixing my curtain.
You're getting blinded.
Well, it's like you saw it. It's like a light show. Here we go. But no, like even if they were getting paid for that, I think a lot of people would be like, okay, well then I don't want that, so they would bail out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's super strange too, because part of it has to do with like the experience that people had during COVID, like quarantines and stuff like that. But a lot of people don't take their jobs as serious as they used to, where it's like, oh God, I have to pay rent. They're like, fine. Like, I mean, at what point is my mental health important to somebody? And it's like, the answer is like, it's got to be important to you.
Yeah.
Because, you know, that's just the reality. You have to take responsibility for your situation, because at the end of the day, it's you that's going to take care of you. You know, it happened to me in the military, and like in that situation, it's different, right? But then you wonder, like, how often is it happening, when and where, what countries, like globally, you know, what's the statistic? But, you know, hey man, so you get paid to do this job, but we're going to give you the responsibilities of this job, but not the pay.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, why would I do that? Well, in the military, they're like, because you signed a contract, and what are you going to do? Quit, you idiot? And you're like, okay, well, you didn't have to call me an idiot, right? But then they tried the same stuff in like jobs where it's like, you can literally just go, hey man, I quit. And they're like, yeah, but like, we're paying you to do this, and all we're making you do is like the responsibility of management, who, you know, management gets paid, you know, 25% to 30% more than you, but like, you know, just do it, right? Come on. And it's like, nah.
No.
I bet you money one person quit from that place yesterday. Like, they're like, well, I didn't know bomb threats were going to be a part of the whole ordeal. I'm out, you know?
No. Yeah. I'm sure it's not what anyone signed up for. And
that one waitress who's like, I knew this day would come, and like has like a I don't know, some superhero costume underneath, Wonder
Just
Woman,
like,
right? Just I'm ready. And they're like,
Breakfast Woman.
Yeah. Wow. I'd watch that show. New on CW, Breakfast Woman, and like at any point in time, like just has a plate of scrambled eggs and bacon ready to.
I was imagining just like her yeeting eggs onto like villains' faces. Yoked
like,
again.
Bitch slapping people with a spatula. Bah!
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, dude, I'm about it. You know,
Yeah.
it's also kind of weird because me and the girlfriend realized that one thing that got really weird during quarantine was like, we stopped going on physical dates. Like, we would try to make date night at home, but you know, you're home all the time, especially when you're locked indoors, and like, you know, it was weird. But I didn't want to go back to movies because there's just so many variables out there now of like, how are people going to act? How are people going to respect each other? How are people going to act with the way corporations are tiptoeing around of like, you know, what level of service do you need so that you'll stay here and keep coming back? So going to the movies was always kind of weird, but I always had like an admiration for going to the movie theater, watching a movie. But as I got older, people just became more and more disrespectful of each other.
Yeah.
Phones, talking during the movie, like you always have, you know, whatever. And then of course there's like the Colorado shooting that happened years ago. So now people think that every movie theater is going to get shut up, and things just got weirder and weirder. So it was like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. Like,
It didn't feel as comfortable as it used to. Yeah.
so, you know, you get to a point where you're like, you know what, F it. Like, let's do it. Let's go order some food. Let's see how that goes. Let's watch a movie. Let's do the thing. And you know, the theater by the house, I think it's a movie tavern. Like, literally, you order the tickets, you order the food and everything the day before. You go, hey, the movie starts at 7:30. Can you bring my food at 7:15? And like clockwork, bam, there's chicken tendies right in front of you. I'm like, dope. So we go and we see Venom 2, which came out, I guess, like a week ago or whatever. So we see it the night before last. And there's these kids like a little ways down on our row. They showed up late, so that was the thing. And then they're like super noisy trying to get food and stuff, and you're like, that's a thing.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, I would get so infuriated of like, I would take it personally, like, hey man, I spent money to watch this big screen and like eat this food, and like, I'm trying to be as quiet as I can, like, can you do that? And you realize that like going to the movies is like kid shit. That's what it is. It's that's what kids have to go do. They go roam around malls or they go to the movies, right?
Well, and there's not malls
As an-
anymore, so
That's not true. I went to a mall like 6 years ago. And, it's wild to me because I wanted to get frustrated, but I couldn't because I was like, they're little kids being little kids. And people are like, oh, they were little kids. I'm like, yeah, they were like 19. And that like offends people because they're like, I'm sorry, excuse me, what? And I'm like, think about it. Your baby sat in public education until you're 18, and then you get thrown out there being called an adult and you have no experience. You have no real experience whatsoever. So you go to the movie theater and you're like, as loud as you can, in the most obnoxious, like fake laugh, right? Or like at one point, we're watching Venom and they just scream, Spider-Man's so cool. And they like elevated the pitch of their voice and like it was an obvious whatever. But everyone did a great job, as far as I could tell, of just act like they're not there. It's like dealing with children, right? When a little kid, if you say shit and the kid's like, oh, that's a naughty word, and they say it and
they get more,
yeah.
Yeah.
You give them the response that they want, they're going to keep doing it. What was crazy is like 6 to 8 incidents of just shouting out something stupid when it was like quiet during the movie happened, or they were talking to each other, and there was no like getting the memo. And it was strange to me because you think about these situations where there's like a bomb threat. Sure, 9 times out of 10, it's probably nothing. It's probably maybe kids like that being like, hey, man, we have nothing else to do. Let's just do a bomb threat at a brunch place, which is sad in itself. That's a problem, right?
Yeah.
But or like imagine like kids are in a situation like that. They're not going to take it seriously because, again, every single fire drill or every time someone pulled the alarm,
it's the boy who cries wolf kind of thing. Like, you don't know when it's the real scenario. But I mean, you're stronger than I would be because so last time we went to the movies, which was right when movies in our area opened up a little bit again. So still COVID procedures, but it was also a movie tavern, ironically. It was not children. It was like 40-year-old people, a couple, and they were right to the left of us. And we went and saw Black Widow. So it's a more serious action film. There's some comedy like any Marvel movie.
Sure.
But it's kind of the same thing that you were seeing. It's mainly like action kind of shit. And these motherfuckers giggled and like said the dumbest commentary the whole time. Like if she went to go grab like a weapon or a tool, they'd be like, what is that tool for? Like super loud. What is she doing with that? Is that gun to protect herself? It's like, what the fuck is going through you don't have to verbalize this shit. We can all hear you. And I don't know if they were stoned or what, but it was the whole entire movie. And by the end, I was like fuming. Because someone that old, I can kind of see like teenagers are teenagers, just going to be little shits. I remember when I was that age, you don't always think about others. You're kind of in your own little world. But if you're a 40-year-old person that has been on that earth that long and you're still like, I don't care what happens to anyone else or how I affect their night or day, I'm going to treat this like my living room and just talk out loud for a whole movie.
Which is weird because I don't think they would do that. And that's like the point people bring up of like trashing a diner or like a restaurant or whatever, because you're like, they get paid to clean it up. And it's like, do you do that at your house? People make a big deal at the gym still, and I used to be one of them, but you realize that it's part of the environment, right? And not putting weights where they go is not the end of the world, but it's just inconvenient, and it's such a stupid thing to just, if we all did it, we would all be happier. And they're like, yeah, but I'm gonna be the piece of shit because you can't do anything about it. And so that was part of my mentality, is that I was like, I could go, all right, I paid money to see this movie. Guys, if you're not going to take it seriously, can you get out? And it literally, all they would have to do is just flex on the fact of like, well, if you touch me, you're in your 30s. I'm like a 19-year-old. Even if they were 21, it wouldn't matter, because they'd be like, why did you get out of line and like put your hands on these young adults? Well, because my words weren't doing anything. Well, why didn't you go tell management? Well, what is management gonna do? Right. And so like the thing is you just realize that it's a mute point. And I think there's a lot more people who are just becoming more reclusive. Like they're like, I'm not gonna do this anymore. And that's something, I guess I'm speaking from my own perspective of, I'm not some kind of loner. I like to be around people, but there's like a certain quality of person that I want around me, right? Like
Yeah.
I want people that respect themselves. Like
Yeah.
that was something that I didn't have a boundary of that. I didn't care if you respected yourself or not. You could hate yourself, great, whatever. I don't want that anymore, right? Because I'm trying not to be a person that loathes himself, right? Or is depression is a very real thing, and some people have to be medically diagnosed and treated, right? Some people have to be, I guess the best way to say this is saved from themselves. But a lot
Yeah.
of us, like when we deal with depression, or maybe like light versions of depression, we only feed into it and make it more severe than it needs to be. Like I realize I'm that kind of person where I was sad and I would push it to the point, like I would just feed my sadness to the point I was entering like depression. There were some things that needed to be addressed and healed and dealt with, but I was making it worse myself. And part of that was some of the people I was surrounded by.
Yeah,
Right.
it is. And it's kind of back to wanting to punch a teenager. That's a maturity thing that you're like, it's not worth me escalating this to where it would eventually go. I
Don't
don't,
give it power.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I see no value. And that's how I view most of it now. Like we were in some drive-through line recently and a dude fucking just cut in front of us. And for me, I was just like, whatever, I don't give a shit. It's one more car, doesn't matter. But it enraged my husband. He was like, how dare he, the audacity. And we kind of had to like talk it through of like, does it matter? And it goes back to like, I wouldn't hang out with that person. I find no value in how they act and how they are. Am I going to remember this in 5 years? No. So I don't care. It is shitty, yes, that they cut in the drive-through line, but it does not affect me long term.
Right.
But his whole argument, and it's a hard one, is if we keep letting people act however they want to act, there's no consequence. But at the same time, we cannot regulate strangers and their morals.
So where it gets super crazy, one day you're going to be watching this episode probably 5 years from now and go, oh, I remember the son of a and you're going to realize that you just lied, because you are going to remember, and it's going to infuriate you and your husband all over. No, I'm kidding. Where it's crazy is that we can regulate people who it's like, hey, like I'm not going to stand for this. I'm not going to, but you will suffer the consequences not in your favor. And that's where it gets wild, right? Is like there are a lot of really good people who work really, really hard to better themselves as people. And it's like, hey, man, I was in a place at one point in time where I was 19 years old and I was straight stupid. I had no experience. I didn't have the right kind of guidance. I was wild and out of control, whatever, right? But hey, I learned these lessons and I'm telling you now, you are on a really bad path. And right now it seems like a joke and you're just whatever. But one day someone's going to go, hey, I don't stand for this. I'm going to make you face consequences. And then whatever consequences I have to face for making you face those consequences, I'm fine with. There are people on this planet who don't give a fuck that they have a life. It's not a blessing or a curse. It's nothing. They're like, whatever. I'm going to die. It doesn't matter. So if I go, hey, you know what? This is what I'm going to commit to. This is what I'm going to do. I don't care, whatever. And they just deal with it. It's wild, right? Because a lot of us are just put into our place of like, okay, I'm not going to be the one that's going to suffer the consequence of prison because someone did XYZ, right? I find it strange because you're right. There is like a maturity that happens, because there was a point in time where I was like, okay, like I'm going to invite you to a duel. We're going to meet on a remote island.
Bring your pistol.
Yeah, that's right. You get one round and one of us is going to die. And yes, it is over. You took the last pack of Twizzlers. Like, F you, motherfucker. And, as I got older, I realized there were a lot of people that don't have an answer to what would you stick to your guns to, like to the death. What are you willing to die for?
Yeah. What hill will you die upon? And that it's kind of used as a joke now. You see it on TikTok and stuff. And they're like, well, I will die on the hill that this scene from The Office was the best scene ever. And that's like as deep as it gets. But it's more of like, no, like morally, if you were put in a situation what would you actually do? And
It's I mean, that's the case, right? Of that. So I'm not a religious person, but I always remember this story like shook me, and it's probably because it was a school shooting and I was like a fifth grader or something, like I was a kid. But there was a story about, actually it might have been Columbine. It had to have been, because I think it was like Columbine was like the first major one, and I was a little kid when that happened.
yeah,
But basically, they put a gun to her head and they're like, "Do you believe in Jesus or do you believe in God?" And they go, "Yes," and they just boom, right? The reality of the story is that it probably didn't matter what the answer was, right? But the person was like, "Yes, this is what I believe my truth is," right?
yeah,
It gets really scary because it's I don't think it's a question that you can just answer immediately. You can come up with an answer, but then if you really dig deep and think about it for a while, or even like, let's say, meditate on it or whatever, there's not a lot out there that you're going to be willing to die for. I mean,
yeah.
even crazier is, what would your answer be of what do you live for? There's not a lot of people that can answer that. Why? Like if there was no consequence to dying, however you would die, right? Like whatever it is, if there was no consequence to it in terms of morality or heaven and hell, and like it was just like, hey, you die, there wouldn't be a lot of people who would be like, oh, hey, I should stick around. And usually it's a person, right? Like we have someone in our life that it's like, man, I enjoy interacting with them, and just on the chance that when we die we don't interact anymore, I'll stick around. You know what I'm saying? But like, of yourself, if you were the only person on the planet, what would keep you going? Why would you be here?
Yeah, yeah. If you
I
change
don't know
it,
the answer to that sometimes, right? Like
uh,
it's like, if it was just me on the planet, if you're Will Smith in the movie Legend or I Am Legend or whatever, why? What is the why? Is it a dog? Is that
it's the
why? Like
dog.
you're like,
It's 100% the dog. Yeah.
smooches for the pooches. You know what I'm saying? Is that, no, that's not a thing. I retract what I said. All right.
No, yeah. No.
Another thing we're gonna remember in 5 years. Son of a bitch.
Love shirts, smooches for the pooches.
Oh no. I think that should be a good idea. I'm not against that.
I mean, I don't think anyone's meant to just know 100% this is the hill I'll die on or why I live. But at some point, you're pushed to it and you do have to choose. But some
Mhm.
people, there's the belief that everyone's on the same timeline and everyone reaches the same stages at the same time. But some people, I've seen it in, people I know in my own life and just, third party interactions, they don't mature until way later, or they had to grow up way sooner.
Mhm.
And like that 19-year-old, maybe he's had a cushy life and he hasn't quite gotten there, or maybe he's going through the hardest time in his life and he wants to act out in a movie theater because it's fun and like, it's meaningless to him. So
Right.
that's what I always try to do is like, I don't normally, my reaction when someone is crazy in public, like Karen level, Chad level, or just being a dick, is who hurt you? You're probably fucked up on something. And as a woman, I guess it's my reaction has always been different. It's never been, I want to punch that guy in the face. It's more of like, I want to get real far away from you because you are not stable and you're near me and I don't feel safe. So
Well,
it's
that's what's
probably,
wild.
yeah.
I reflect on the part of me that because it wasn't like I was always fighting. I was always just, there'd be people, they would ask the question of like, you didn't lock your door. And I'd be like, yeah, I wish a motherfucker would. And they're like, what does that mean? I'm like, I don't know. But if someone comes into my apartment that I don't want, or in my house or whatever, like, you just go postal. Hey, like you literally walked into my reality. Like I have the right, which that doesn't make any sense, right? But that was the thing, is that I was damaged and I was always in a bad mood and I was always messed up and I wanted to act out violently and had to just control myself because it was like, it's not worth the risk. You know what I mean? And it's like, I believe we attract what we are.
Yeah.
So like, there's a little bit of like jealousy sometimes because I'm like, dang, like Megan's already going to therapy. Like she's already like, I'm going to do that. And I know like I'm working towards that goal, but there's a reality of like, you get to a point where you're like, maybe it's me. And then if you dig deep enough, you go, it is you. Like it is you that causes a lot of your suffering.
Well,
Because
and it's always you, even when you're in a good place or in a better place, it's still your experience and not your fault. Or that's the hard thing about failure. If we get back to that, is we look at everything. Like if you look at yourself when you were 19, you go, oh, do you view it as a failure? Or now you can see, no, it was just different. Like I had not moved through certain things to where I am now. Just
yeah,
like
I mean,
in 10 years, you're going to look at yourself now and be like, wow, that guy was doing pretty good, but I'm even better now because I did those things that I wanted to do.
man, I thought you were going to go the different way. In 10 years, you'll look back and go, man, he was doing pretty good, because you're going to be homeless. Oh my
You're in a gutter.
yeah, because you live in the clouds, boy. I mean, I work on that, because I did. I mean, for a long time, even jokingly, which you have to realize at some point, joke or not, like negatively speaking to yourself. So you want to talk about like failure and growth, right? That's a great way to talk about the topic of self-growth. Is a ton of failure. Big part of it is lack of wisdom, or lack of forcing yourself into a position to gain wisdom. So back to the joke, I always had the joke of, man, if I could go back, I'd beat the crap out of myself. And people are like, and I'm like, think about it. Like, I'm in my 30s now. If I went and dealt with 18-year-old me, I'd been like, it wouldn't even been like, oh, that's you. Like, give yourself a break. It'd have been like, bro, someone has to do this. And if I'm going to time travel, it might as well be me teaching me a lesson, right? Like, that's what I've been doing this whole time. Right.
Would you still beat
With that being
yourself up? Or you feel different about it now?
Okay, so I like the movie Fight Club, and people are like, oh, that's so edgy, right? But I just genuinely enjoy that movie. It like resonated with me. And one of the questions in the movie is, if you could fight anybody, dead or alive, who would you fight? And my answers changed over the years, but the answer that I've had for a while that I've held on to is myself. I would love to fight younger me and just see. I think it would be comical for everyone. Young me,
Hello,
older me,
motherfucker.
you, anybody, maybe, whatever. I think it would be like a weird experience, because if you think about it, we've had battles with ourselves this whole time. And I genuinely just want to fight younger me, because I just want to see how much heart he really had, because I know I've lost some of it as an old man in his 30s, right?
It's really interesting, and maybe it's just, I mean, everyone's perspective is different, because mine is more, if I went back and talked to myself when I was 18 or 19, I guess, yeah, I've never wanted to fight myself, but I dealt with like similar things that you dealt with, depression and difficult trauma and all of that stuff, and loss. But going back to that girl, I think it would be more of advice and like, hey, get ready for this kind of stuff. And also, you should probably stop doing what you're doing now, because it's awful. It's not good for you.
I think that's good to acknowledge. So one thing that was really interesting for me, and I'll kind of explain that I've had your perspective before, but where it changed is when I was going into the military, I asked people who had done it, hey, what do I need to know? So I talked to a sniper. He was a sniper in the Marine Corps, and he goes, look, man, all I'm going to tell you is keep your head up and just keep going, right? Keep getting better. Keep doing it. Just one day at a time. Keep your head on a swivel, whatever. Kind of vague. And I'm like, yeah. But boot camp's coming. He's like, look, dude. And he explained it to me. He was like, I'm not here to tell you what my experience was and what I think you should do. You have to go do it on your own. And if I had to talk to 19-year-old me, it'd be like, look, dude, like I do have some of the answers for you, but I'm not going to give them to you. I wouldn't have gotten here if somebody would have told me how I was supposed to do it, because the issue and the reason why I want to fight 19-year-old me is he was so aimless. He thought he had direction and he thought he was going somewhere, but he had no fucking idea. And I think there were people that were probably trying to like hint at that towards me. But maybe they didn't have the confidence, or maybe they didn't feel they were in the right place to be that person, right? Or whatever.
I think, I mean, I can't shit on how you feel about that past self, but I think a lot of I think part of it is just like you physically want to see what he can do to 30-year-old you. That's kind of what I'm picturing is like a fitness thing, more of like, what can you fuck me up?
and what's crazy, and obviously it's I would be willing to admit that it's most likely ego, is that I honestly think that 33-year-old me with the experience that he has would just I would have to take kind of a beating, because I think 19-year-old me had the like unreasonable amounts of energy.
Yeah.
I mean, bad. Like it would just be like, I'm gonna try to tire you out, and that's how I'm gonna beat you, is what 19-year-old me probably would have done. Or he would have thought like, I could probably get him a chokehold, but didn't actually know how to do that at that time, right? Where now I know that it's like you hold back, and you've learned through experience, and like you have to manipulate the interaction, right? But yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that I would do well, and maybe you're right. Maybe I'm just curious of.
I think it's purely. But there's definitely there's still some like, I want to teach him a lesson or whatever it may be that's less physical. But I guess my original point was most 19-year-olds, including girls, are stupid as fuck. We're all dumb. Even if someone is like, I want to be a doctor, she doesn't know shit, or he doesn't know if they actually, because then when they're 40 and they're a doctor, they're like, I really hate sticking my hand up people's asses all day. Like, this is not what I don't like seeing poop on the regular. Like, it's not what they signed up for. So I would just say, like, don't beat yourself up for that. And if anyone's listening that's that age, it's going to be confusing and very, vague for a while. And then eventually you just got to keep going, and it works itself out.
I think so. And I will say, I don't like I have reflected. I don't just think about when I was 19 and go, oh dear God, what happened? Like that part of me doesn't even really exist anymore,
Yeah.
And where it gets weird is, I do agree with you. Like, hey man, if you're like 15, 19, 25, even, what's so weird is that at some point in time, and like you said, some people it takes longer. I think it took me a little longer to get there, but once I got there, you like look back to a time where you're like, I really thought I had it figured out. And you're like, how did I not die?
Oh,
and people are like, what do you mean, how did you not die? You worked at a car dealership. Yeah, but like, what was I doing? And they're like, what do you mean, what were you doing? I mean, just keep going and you'll see what I'm saying. Like, you're going to get to a point where you look back and go, oh yeah, okay, well, there's this weird moment where, and part of it's like confidence builds through failure, right? Because, all right, F it. If I mess it up, I'm just going to get up again.
Yeah.
Like that. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get up again. I have taken the responsibility to make that decision. We fall down, we get back up. Then you just keep doing it over and over, partially, on purpose. You throw yourself in uncomfortable things, hoping that it teaches you something, and probably through failure.
Well, and sometimes it's not even on purpose, because I didn't intentionally. I would say a lot of it was autopilot, and then it eventually became, oh, I care about this. Like, I'm going to make an effort to find something within this thing I've already been doing, like college or, starting a career that I actually enjoy. But it was just like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. Keep going. You can't sit there and do nothing. And I think a lot of people stall out, and you can't blame them. It's scary as shit. Like, you don't want to get stuck in something that you're not sure about. So not saying my method was great, but I just kept going in something I'm not sure about. And it eventually led me to the right thing. It's not going to happen like all at once.
I do agree that autopilot is a blessing and a curse, because
it's both. Yeah.
Part of the autopilot that's really cool is like, I wake up at 3:45 in the morning and I'm like, bro, it's 3:45 in the morning. Like, I'm not that guy that's like, oh, I wake up at 3:45 in the morning and then I also go, I fucking love it. No, I get up at 3:45 because it's a functional, like, I have to do it for whatever I'm doing. And are there benefits to it? Yes. But like, there are people who they're like, I will die before I wake up at 3:45.
That's me.
And I go, great, because I'm not inviting people. Like, I'm not telling you to like, do it. It's great. Mark Wahlberg's a psychopath. He gets up at 2:30 in the morning. There's something wrong with you, dude. I said it. Nah, I'm kind of jealous. I need to get on that level. But so my thing is, autopilot made me where I was like, I want my weekends off. I want to work a job that I just want to get by, so I can play some Xbox, and like there's nothing wrong with that. But that was what my autopilot told me. And one day when I went, dude, I'm not even good at playing Xbox. I don't even really enjoy it. What I enjoy is I like spending time with people and having conversation. Fuck the Xbox, right? Like anybody else that wants to play it, please do, because you probably love it. And I am jealous. Like I wish I did. But that's what I really wanted. I just wanted to be able to like talk to people whenever.
Yeah.
Another thing that was weird about autopilot is I kept trying to find like some kind of job, just assuming that I had to forfeit some of my happiness so that I could survive whatever. Bro, you could be happy and homeless. I've seen it. There are people who are like, bro, I don't work a day in my life. Literally. Do I have to technically kind of find where I'm going to get food? Sure. But like, that's like the top of my list. I knock it out. And then maybe I find alcohol. And you're like, there are people that if you talk to them, they are like super honest about it. Like they're like, hey, I maybe I'm not all there, but they're like, I don't have some crazy mental disease. I wasn't abandoned by my family. I just decided I wasn't going to do that anymore. And like, here we are. Especially like in Hawaii, dude, like living on an island where every day is pretty much a good day. Like there are people who are like, nah, it's not the most comfortable, but dude, I live on the beach. And you're like,
it's tempting.
Yeah.
I mean,
until you realize the internet's
nice. I think
can't listen to the FOF podcast if you don't have internet. I'm just saying.
Don't be homeless. So, that sounds bad.
Yeah.
So you could listen to our podcast. And I think that's like, we're kind of going to extremes here. Like being super rich doesn't always make you happy. I'm sure Jeff Bezos is a miserable, bald fuck, but that's just my belief on him.
Nah, dude. I met him literally 2 days ago and I was like, how was space? And he goes, I don't talk to people like you. And I went, what? And then I was escorted out of the
And then
building.
he just pats you on the head and,
No, I was tased and drug out in zip ties. And they were like, you'll never work a day in your life again. I don't know. It was a crazy day. Jeffrey Bezos.
But rich or poor or whatever it is, it's finding, like you said, originally it was, I want to play Xbox. This brings some kind of dopamine to my brain. Like I enjoy it. And then you translated it to like, no, I more of enjoy playing with people or hanging out with people and less of the actual game itself. So it led you to something like this.
100%. Yeah. And then like I even said earlier of like, then eventually I was like, no, the quality of people in my life matter. And I think people probably would take that the wrong way where they're like, but I'm like, if I'm around a person that only loves to play chess all the time, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to spend all the time with them, but I hate chess. I hate it. People would be like, why are you doing that to yourself? And it's like, well, I was told I'm not allowed to have certain types of people in my life. Right. Well, and like boundaries are important. I think we're kind of low-key told like, you're not allowed to have that.
Well, boundaries. And then also like, there's the misconception that your oldest friends should be your friends forever. And sometimes you do outgrow people. So people, I still have like a few very close friends from high school days, but it's a small little group at this point. But there were people that I hung out with in high school that were so damaging, like such a bad, and it goes to the bad influence thing, which I hate to use a term that like your parents would use of like, that person is a bad influence on you. They're not fucking wrong. Like some of those people as kids, you're like, no, Timmy's really cool. He just does a lot of drugs and illegal stuff. But if you're around that all the time, you're going to get dragged into that world and hang out with people you shouldn't, go to places that aren't safe, do reckless things because you're with a group of people that are like, this is okay. It's totally normal. And then you get out of that and you're like, what the fuck was I doing?
I've talked to people who are like, I will homeschool my kids or I will send them to a private school, but I would have to like extremely vet it. And you're like, well, what do you mean? And they're like, bro, obviously I don't know any of this is fact, but like there was a conversation with like two parents and they're like, yeah, my oldest is like in sixth grade, and like the other day we got an email from the school being like, hey, if your kid rides the bus, like there were two kids like blowing each other on the bus, and they're like, you might need to talk to your kid about it. And you're like, I might need to talk to my kid about it, like what happened? And like, two kids are just doing the kids, and what's crazy is that, again, that's an extreme, but there are these crazy situations where I hear stories about like kids in elementary school getting in trouble for bringing a gun to school, and you're like, it was a third grader. And we live in a crazy world, but it blows your mind. Again, it's an extreme. But when I say that, nobody goes like, oh yeah, I couldn't see that happening. People are like,
at this point,
people are
we're all like,
oh my,
yeah.
I can't believe he wasn't younger. What the oh my God, an infant had a gun at a hospital. You're like, an infant? And they're like, they came out with it. Oh my God.
I think
it's insanity.
It's a hard thing, and like neither of us have children, so it's all speculation of like how to handle that. But my parents' approach is you have to learn from your own mistakes. Obviously, they gave advice, they tried to guide me and all of that. They weren't just like, you're free to run with the wolves and we'll see if you survive it. But they, at a certain point, like when I started driving, paying for my own insurance and car, had a job, you can go do stuff. You just have to be home by a certain time. We trust you to have some good judgment. And mistakes were made, bad judgment was had. But if I didn't learn all that, it would just be delayed. And that's what I worry about. I'm not saying like public school or private school, one is better, but I knew people that were super sheltered. And then as soon as they got that freedom, whether it's when they graduated high school and moved out of their parents' place or went off to college, they went balls to the fucking wall and like derailed their whole life. So it comes out eventually. I think it's better in little doses throughout your growth.
Well, in no way am I saying one's better than the other, because obviously
they both have their
good people can be bad apples, and bad apples can be good people.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't necessarily matter where you go. I mean, you've heard the stories of like even military school of like, I just can't control my kid, whatever, send them to that where it's supposed to create some kind of like ability to obey or like discipline, whatever. Not that those things are bad to have, but strictly like pinning someone to the ground until they're just going to submit or like you break their spirit, like how good is that for anybody?
It doesn't always, it doesn't teach them anything about how to successfully like grow as a person. It just rubs their nose in the dirt. Like it doesn't, for me, that method of like, we're going to be so strict and you're not going to be able to even think about how to brush your teeth independently, like that kind of stuff. It's just going to stunt them and maybe break them, because there's been many cases of a guy that's sent to like a military school and then ends up running away or something like that, and he's never seen again. Or I think there was even a case in like a military boarding school where he ended up killing like a classmate. It just, I guess we're back to extremes.
Here's the deal, guys. We warned you that a train would be hitting you. Here it comes. Choo choo. No, I'm kidding. I don't think
choo choo, motherfucker.
Oh my God. And with that note, go ahead and call in. Leave us your thoughts and opinions. I do find it interesting too of how easy it is to kind of skip over the fact that like great things are usually happening, right? Like yes, a third grader brings a gun to the school, but like, okay, like what about the third grader that was like, you know what, I see this guy and he looks like he hasn't drank any water and maybe is like homeless or whatever, and it's like, I'm going to bring an extra bottle of water in my backpack and give it to a person that might need it. Or like, oh, so and so tripped and fell and dropped all their books, I'm going to help them pick them up. Like, we don't want to talk about stuff like that because it's almost like a conditioning.
It's kind of, our society likes more the sensationalized drama. It's just, it sells more, like that kind of thing. So you don't hear the stories about the good stuff, but I've always, and to a fault, this has brought many failures, tried to see the good in people, which you should do. You should see the good in people. But there's a certain, because when I was young, I was trying to see the good in people, but also super naive and didn't understand like someone can be nice to you and be a terrible person. Like it just because on the surface they're nice doesn't mean they're good to be around. And I think
2,000 years later.
I lost my train of thought. It's gone.
Bad things happen to good people. Tune in next week on.
Well, I guess my point was that because you were kind of talking about it's mainly negative, that's all we see. If you start actively looking for good people or goodness in people, you're going to see it more. It's kind of like when you learn a new word and then you see that word all the time, that kind of thing.
Or you get like a new car and everyone's all of a sudden driving it.
Yeah, anything like that. Or it even applies to quote unquote like success. If you start seeing or thinking, I need new opportunity, I want a new job, I want to do this, I want to do that, instead of thinking, I can't do that, I don't think I'm going to get any new opportunities, I feel super stuck, it's going to kind of flip it on its head and you'll see more of those openings because you're actually looking for them. And that's coming from like when I've either been younger or depressed and you're in that, like you said earlier, that mindset of like, everything's gray, everything's fucking terrible, I'm just gonna circle into this sadness until it spirals down. And then it doesn't help anything and it doesn't help you crawl out. And I'm not saying you can cure depression with like thought alone. Definitely you might need more help than that, but it helps. It's the only way you can really help yourself, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, well, so you actually started a really good point and I was like, come on, get back to it. And that was, there was a time, no, you did great. So there was,
and
a
you
time
didn't
where
get back to it.
there was a part where you started the point of like, you see the good in everyone, but then good people can do bad things.
Yeah,
you do have to have some kind of skepticism or defense mechanism or instinct development of, wait a second, otherwise you're going to see the good in everyone and scammers are going to call you often.
Yeah,
right. You're even though you did it yesterday and the day before that, we are calling about your car insurance warranty, so we're gonna need you to go ahead $10 million so that you can keep your car
and you're
under
like, okay,
warranty.
done.
I have to do it. Why else would he ask me to do this? He's trying to take care of me. I don't know the answers to the universe, but I will tell you that anyone listening to this, try it for like 7 days of just try to focus on your intentions of what you want. Like deep down, what do you want? What do you desire? Outside of murdering people, if that's what you want, get help. And genuinely like put it to the test of what you focus on is what you will get. I'm not saying you can just sit there and go, I want $1 million and it's going to show up. You have to do the action and the work. But like, if you want to see opportunity, you can find it, right? You want to see positivity, it's there, it's everywhere. I struggle a lot with this, but the phrase happiness is a habit, we've heard this before. And there are days that I am just like wearing poopy pants, man. Oh, great. I got to stop at a red light again. Like my life is so bad. And it's like, did you shit yourself? Are you wearing poopy pants right now? Like, why are you so upset? And you're like, okay, well, first off, that was offensive, right? But second, like there is a point. Getting aggravated, sometimes we just fuel the fire because we want to feel that way, which is weird. To the point where like we make ourselves sick sometimes. Well, bro, we did it again. Here we are.
All I can think of is your comment of like, unless it's murder, don't do that. And we just created a serial killer and they're out there like, This is my intent.
Yeah, this is what I've wanted this whole time. I didn't know all I had to do was think about it 24/7.
Finally convinced me. Jesus.
You know, that horror movie I watched a couple of years ago did say start with animals. I'll be back, guys. And oh my. I literally am thinking about the Rob Zombie Halloween remake where you get to see a little bit of like him as a child. And all the, horror movies talk about like there were signs because he would hurt animals, but like that is a real thing.
It is
like,
a legitimate, yeah.
Hey, if your kid is snatching up chipmunks out of the park and torturing them, like we need to deal with that. There's something wrong there.
And now you're reminding me we should definitely do like a Halloween episode soon. This might be coming out around Halloween. We tied it all together.
Gosh darn it. This wasn't about failure. It was about Halloween the whole time. Go out to movie theaters this weekend and check out Halloween, whatever the new one's called. This time it's for real. I am going to go see that movie. Maybe not in theaters. Hopefully in theaters. At some point in my life, they're going to be like, this is the last one. And like Jamie Lee Curtis, even though she is killing it, is like in her 70s or 80s. Like
they'll just CGI her in.
No. Oh God, the disappointment in my soul. Oh, it hurts.
It's never gonna stop.
Yeah. Hey, happy Halloween, everybody. God, I hope this comes out on Halloween.
It might. If I'm doing my math right, maybe.
Yeah. If my calculations are correct. I think it's that time.
It is that time.
Yeah. Just you have to do it in your most spooky voice that you have.
It's a no for me.
Or you
dog.
don't. I mean, you have pink hair. You can do whatever you want.
Nah, yeah, no spooky voice for me. But you can check us out on all our social medias. We are also on YouTube if you want to see our face and you're listening to audio right now. We beg and ask that you rate, subscribe, if you want to on the subscribe. The rating, we are forcing you. Like you have to go tell us how we're doing at this point.
This is a metaphorical, you don't have a choice. Rate us. But you said it's metaphorical. I know what I said.
Like literally and figuratively.
Hypothetically or science fiction-y.
And then our favorite part, send us your failures, funny, serious, anonymous, or put your whole name to it. You can email those to friendsoffailurepodcast@gmail.com or call into our voicemail Ethel at 916-304-3345.
So I started this thing where I'm like, all right, I'll ask a question and maybe that'll give someone the motivation. All right, here's a question for you. If you could win like an iPad by entering a raffle of calling Ethel and leaving like a genuine piece of material about your life or something you experienced or whatever, funny, deep, whatever, would you be more willing to try? Because
you offer an iPad.
No, hypothetically. But the thing is that like, can you imagine that of people go, oh my God, I could get an iPad, and then they're the only person that calls in, and so they just had 100% chance of getting an iPad?
If we were hypothetically giving away an iPad, whoever's listening right now, you just got an iPad, hypothetically. Terms and conditions do apply. It's not a real iPad. It's just a notebook that says like iPad.
But it's vintage in 5 years when we remember this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Hey man, I'm glad we got this opportunity to do this. Are
you gonna go?
I know that
beat up yourself after this.
Look, time travel's real, and even if I could, I wouldn't. So, like, can you imagine that you can time travel and you go, oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm gonna zap back to 2008 and I'm gonna beat the living crap out of myself. 2008 Facebook.
And then you rip a hole in all of space and time, because like the whole rule of time travel is don't talk to yourself, and you're gonna go punch yourself in the face.
Yeah, but also there's also a possibility that that's a rule that was made up out of assumption, and like maybe someone needs to just have the audacity to go do it.
Hashtag worth it.
Hashtag we're all dead. On next week's episode, I'm literally like screaming as there's like a wormhole or something in the sky, just slowly sucking and I'm just screaming, like trying to explain what's happening. And you're like, why are we zooming right now? Like
We
the
should
end
probably
of the
stop.
world. Yeah, you've literally ripped a hole in time and space, you son of a bitch. This time on This Is How I Failed, I went and talked to myself in time travel. Well, hey everybody, we do appreciate the listening and the subscribing and
All the
and
stuff.
the Ethel phone calls, all the hypotheticals that we're talking about. But on that note, we would like to leave you with one final thought, and that is life is happening for you, not to you. So go out there and fail and then call us about it.
And then and then beat yourself up in the past and the
Hashtag
future.
We created a wormhole. Out.
Finish him.
If it's not I'm stronger than you, it's I'm wiser than you, I'm more loving.
Bye, have a great time.